This is the Team Objection podcast for March 12th, 2020, episode 429. I'm reading work text while giving the intro because I'm just that goddamn talented. And in this particular episode, the boys are back. We just saw Dave. He was just here a couple days ago visiting, which was cool. And we had a chance to play basketball together, and we were probably better than the Suns, although they've been playing better the last week. And, you know, it's nice to see him, even though he's a little bit scraggly right now.
Yeah, will you shave? You're embarrassing me.
I will say next week's show is probably the last show that I'll have this.
I'm sure
that's going away after that.
Is waiting with bated breath.
Well, fans, stay tuned or be excited, because I guess the end is nigh.
It's coming quickly, because I'm going back to work very soon. Very soon.
This week's episode, as teased at the end of last week, is going to be the second in our Best Year of Video Games Ever series. This time Dave is here to join us. He was bummed he couldn't be last time, but he was having some kid or some dumb excuse. So he's here this time, and we're all going to start debating some of the years of the past and decide whether or not they might be the best year ever. Now, this one is the second time we've done this, and as such, we have our first decision to make. Because the way this series is going to work is, it's like there's a throne, and something sits on it, until it's knocked off by something else. So right now, it was, 97 or 98 we did? I forgot.
I thought it was 96.
Well, shit. I've done no research for this. Whatever year it was.
I think, while he looks that up, I think this is an interesting format because you're going to run into a thing where, a bad matchup. There's a year that maybe could have been second place, but it ran into the first place way too soon. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting, but I think it's a fine format.
98 was the one you did before.
So I was right the first time.
Yes, you were. Sorry.
That's fine. So 1998 is currently sitting on the throne by way of default. There have been no other contenders to the throne. And as such, now we're going to decide each time we do this going forward, is the one that we're talking about better than or worse than the one that sits there? If it is, it becomes the new best year ever. And if it doesn't, it gets just shoved off into oblivion because that's probably the only consideration it's going to get. So stakes are pretty high for something that shouldn't have high stakes at all.
I mean, we can kind of agree that there can be two really good ones, but one has to be better. That's the thing.
Yeah. The whole thing, unfortunately, though, is called best. So if you're second best, we can be like, you were awesome. You're great. And then still push them off the throne. So
this is hard. I'm looking at both 1998 and 2001, and I want to rehash. We already did 98, but there's some good stuff in both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that'll ultimately be the decision. It's meant to be a little bit agonizing. If it wasn't, if it was a slam dunk, then why would we waste time talking about a bad year?
That's true.
Like 1988 in video gaming, probably not number one on my list. And 88 is not even that bad. There's some decent stuff in that year. 1976 in video gaming, probably not going to make the cut.
Pong!
And...
Pong!
So, at the end, we'll kind of talk about what was big in this particular year, what was big in the other year, etc. But our task right now is to tackle just 2001 as a whole, its biggest hits, some of its forgotten sleepers, all that jazz. And I don't think you can start by talking about anything except Halo.
Actually, that's the problem, because Grand Theft Auto 3 also came out this year. But let's talk about Halo. Kind of revolutionized everything in the first-person shooter. I mean, it took kind of like the GoldenEye effect and then ramped that up with the LAN parties and... I mean, I think the single-player campaign is pretty good, too.
Yeah.
That's what endeared me to Halo so much when I played it back then was, not growing up playing first-person shooters, I sucked at any multiplayer, and I went to one LAN party in high school. Chris, I think you went with me on that one.
Yeah, I sucked too.
Yeah, we were both terrible at it. And so, like, all these people are so good at it. And that was the old school game, Xbox controller, where the white and black buttons were, like, on the top of the controller. So you had to, like, like, you couldn't reach properly.
Yep.
You can probably reach fine, Chris, because your giant hands.
I had the hands for it.
Yeah, my hands are just small enough that it was, like, kind of a stretch.
I barely could. It was still not, like, comfortable, or you still had to kind of think about it. You had to shift your hand to get to it still.
Yeah.
That was my first-person shooter.
Same. Well,
on dual analog.
On dual analog, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, playing the first person actually playing it, when I played through the one player, I was like, holy crap, this is actually a really good game. Like, this is an intriguing story. Like, it's got the high stakes. Like, oh my God, the entire galaxy's going to die. But still, it's fun. It was kind of early that they did that.
Yeah, but it was a story I didn't know that I wanted until I played through it. And you can look back on it now, and I think it still holds up okay. It's not as cool as I remember it being. But at the end of the day, it was still an original story with big-time stakes and a protagonist that at the time was fine being cool doing nothing. It was a self-insert, and that was okay. Because, I mean, GoldenEye did a lot of big things for the industry and that genre as a whole, but at the end of the day, the single-player mode was just playing through levels from the movie, which was cool. You know, you could be like, oh, I remember that part, and oh, this is neat. But this was an original story, and I think it deserves a lot of credit for that because it set the pace for so much that came after it.
Dude, Halo's cool. Like, it starts off pretty generic. Although I like that you are on the losing side of a very bad situation. That's pretty cool. But then the whole twist in the middle with the flood. I know they're not a fun enemy, but that whole sequence of you think you know what game Halo is, and then they throw a complete curveball at you. I think it was really cool.
That's part of what I loved most about it because, well, especially the way I beat this, I ended up doing like a co-op mode on that, and my friend Andy and I played this and beat it on a really hard mode because eventually, like especially against the flood, it was like, all right, buddy, you go in, you fight everybody off till you die, then I'll go in when you respawn, and then like we did like the alternating turns almost.
Yeah, that's a classic way to do that one.
Yeah, so if you both win, and obviously you both die because. Man, on those harder modes, the flood would they're relentless. You had no chance. So, but having that in, like, there was so much tension when you're there by yourself and, like, you're fighting the flood and you're like, shotgun, come on, go down.
Yeah.
it was fun.
This is like the heat of the console wars, too. Like, because you had Halo on the launching Xbox, the killer app at a time when a killer app was still a thing that very much mattered, kind of saved Microsoft.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it'd be over if it wasn't for Halo. And then on the other side, for the PlayStation 2, you have Grand Theft Auto 3, which is crazy. Dave, did you freeze? Are you still there?
Oh, I did freeze. God damn it.
I was like, I expected him to have a bigger reaction.
He's catching up. I see him moving now.
Yes, I can sort of hear you. Yeah.
Okay, he's coming back into frame. We'll proceed, and we'll see. Look, viewers, we're experiencing it just like you are. We don't know what's happening.
Dave, this is your second chance to give me a enthusiastic response to Grand Theft Auto 3. Wow, thumbs up. Great for radio too.
No, I now I can hear you. Is my point.
Oh, okay.
Let's state this reaction again.
He was just guessing. All right, here we go. Ready? All right, everybody take breathe. All right. You know what else came out that year? Grand Theft Auto 3.
You know, one of my least favorite Grand Theft Auto games.
Well, come on.
That's not the reaction you wanted.
Fucking time, man. That was huge.
So here's the thing. 2001, I was 16 years old. I didn't have a PlayStation 2 yet. I had a regular PlayStation, and I never even touched this game. Like, until I got, like, a 3-pack that had, like, San Andreas, Vice City, and Grand Theft Auto 3. And that's when I first played it, and I already played San Andreas, so this game sucked to me.
Dave shouldn't be qualified to talk about video games. You know how Stephen A. Smith always like yells at Max Kellerman and is like, you shouldn't talk basketball. You shouldn't be allowed to talk basketball. That's what I feel for Dave. He shouldn't be allowed to talk video games.
So I mean, holy shit, that's a real overreaction.
We're like 5 minutes into the segment for the first time with Dave, and you're already ready to jettison him off the island.
Yeah, pretty much. So, Dave, let me explain to you then. Grand Theft Auto 3 was...
revolutionary. I understand.
Yeah, and honestly, really good. Like, you know, sometimes you say, like, oh, it was revolutionary. Like Zelda, the first one. Revolutionary, kind of hard to play now, even though I know you love it. Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Grand Theft Auto 3, well, it's probably still a little bit hard to play, sure, but, like, it's what I like from Rockstar games. Like, the cutscenes and the writing, and I'm sure it's pretty rudimentary now, but, like, it got me into that mode.
Did that have a silent protagonist in it? Because I think it did.
Yes, it did.
Okay, and that bugged me.
Well, all the supporting characters were cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's believe me, it was definitely an amazing upgrade from the original Grand Theft Autos, which is like, hey, look, there's this little bug of a car driving on the street, and you got this like helicopter view over the top. It's a huge upgrade, an amazing play, and for the time it was unbelievable. I just unfortunately experienced something better first, so it's hard to go back to it.
Yep, which happens unfortunately with some series, and that's tough because you hear good things about some earlier games in them, and you're like, oh, I want to go back and try those. And if you've had a newer experience and you lose some quality of life improvements and some graphics and some other stuff along the way, you just sometimes don't have it click with you in a way that everybody else did because you didn't live it at the time, and that sucks. But I think it's also fair.
All right, Dave. Here, this will be one that you played. When everyone else was playing Grand Theft Auto, Dave was playing Silent Hill 2. Tell us about it, Dave.
Actually,
probably neither of you are really big into horror games. I bet neither of you have played this.
Nope.
I have not played through it. I played parts of it, and I know it can scare the shit out of you for reasons that are more unknown than actually gameplay.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you a story about Silent Hill 2. Mm-hmm. It made me physically ill. It was just, and I found out later, I feel like I've shared the story on this podcast before. They intentionally did stuff to the music and the sound effects that are supposed to elicit kind of uneasy, queasy feeling from the player. And it worked, and it was constant. And there's not many jump scares. I'm not thinking of any. It's not that kind of game. But it's like this trickling feeling of like fear and unease. I keep saying that's really what it comes down to.
If I remember right, maybe it was the first one, but they had problems with the frame rate and were like loading the screen fast enough, so they intentionally made it foggy in the background so that you couldn't see what was upcoming, and that added such a layer of fear because you had no idea what you were walking into the entire game. Yeah. So it's just knowing that there's going to be some dog that's turned inside out that's about to attack you as soon as you walk forward really added to that unease.
It works for Silent Hill. Not so good for Superman 64. But, yeah. I mean, it's that. And it's, you come to this. It's in an industry where so many games can have that sterile feeling. You have this game where everything is grimy and rusty and gross. And it's disgusting. It's torturous to go through. And I mean this all as a compliment. Like they nailed it.
Yeah, that series didn't really continue after 2, did it?
No, it sure did. Not the same heights, though. I would say.
That's what I mean. What I mean. It didn't have the same popularity. I think having better graphics almost hurt it in a way.
Yeah, I can agree with that actually, because you didn't have like Resident Evil adapt the gameplay adapted. Mm-hmm. Silent Hill, not really. So. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. So 2001, you have a game that really revolutionized first-person shooters, third-person action games, horror games, and we're only 3 games in.
Yeah, all 3 of those very ambitious. And the third one I want to talk about as part of a trifecta is this. So Grand Theft Auto was delayed because a certain thing happened in September that year.
Weird.
Yeah, so that came out towards the end of October, and Halo came out within 3 weeks of that. And in between them was another huge game, one that I played a ton of back then, which is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, subsequent weeks gave us those 3 games. And you can find some other points like that. There was a big one, was it a couple years ago, when like Breath of the Wild came out and Persona 5 and a couple other like huge games came out. It happens at times in this industry, but all 3 of these we know for sure have stood the test of time and were good then, and then are also influential to now. Now, Tony Hawk 3 did not exactly revolutionize anything in the same way the other games we've talked about so far did, but it perfected a formula, and it added the whole like reverts and being able to string together combos by doing tricks on the ground in between half pipes or grinds or anything like that. Soundtrack's really good, and man, there was no better Tony Hawk. 4 was okay, and then everything after that was just...
Yep.
I can't think of a game where I spent more time not having a fucking clue what I was doing than Tony Hawk, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Basically just skating around pushing buttons. Like, maybe this will do a trick.
Tony Hawk 3, I think, was the one where I made it a goal. It would track, God, what's the term? Like transitions. And each level had a certain transition. If you go from this bar to that bar, or this bar to another bar, those are both 2 different transitions. It was a goal for me to hit every transition. Like, that's the amount of time and care I was spending with this game.
Wow.
I loved it. I don't really know why, but I did.
Which I don't think you grew up skateboarding at all, right?
Not at all. I would go in the backyard and I would pretend that I was making a new game based on Tony Hawk with my scooter.
Nice.
And it was called Shaun Elter's Pro Scootering 3.
Very critically, very creative there, Shaun.
Yeah. Very cool too. Not lame at all.
And innovative in that it skipped 1 and 2 and just went straight to 3.
Exactly.
So I mean, I don't have a ton to say about Tony Hawk. I mean, if you've played those games, you know. And like you guys, I didn't skate at all. but I thought it was super fun to play anyways.
Yeah.
And I can still remember guys like Bob Burnquist now. I don't know why. I've never watched skating in like the X Games or any other format, but I remember Bob Burnquist because that was the guy I played back then. I don't know. It just stuck with me.
Well, the actual gameplay format was really good because it wasn't just a sandbox. There were like challenges.
Yeah.
And the challenges were fun.
Yeah.
And so you could have substituted skateboard for a few different things, at least in my opinion. I'm sure the skateboarding community loved it and there was something to latch onto, but it wasn't about that. It was about fun challenges where every trick you start begins a sort of like gambling aspect. Do you keep this grind going or do you bail because it's getting really iffy? You're going to lose all your points, but if you can make this jump, you're going to like double it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the multiplier keeps going. There's collectibles, some of which had actually solid rewards.
Yeah.
And again, soundtrack, very emblematic at the times. So, I mean, just really phenomenal stuff. I didn't really play it when it first came out on PS2, but I did get it for GameCube, and that was still in 2001, so I'm counting it.
Yeah. Now, so we talked about revolutionizing games, and then we talked about a game that perfected a formula. I would like to throw into the ring Smash Brothers Melee.
Yeah.
Because it almost did both. It perfected a formula introduced in the first one, although I don't know if you can call it that because it took everything that the first one did and absolutely blew it out of the water.
So much better.
In fact, you could argue every Smash Brothers since then has worked to perfect what Melee did. Melee was phenomenal. And I thought this is where you were going with your last one, Chris, because I spent an ungodly amount of time on that game with every character.
It's really funny for me to remember doing playing this game, because I mainly played it with Chris, who kicked my ass every freaking time we played because he's better at these games than I am. So it's just kind of funny in my memory because enjoying the hell of it, and like the sandbag one especially, like that was so much fun to do that one.
Yeah, I did all the puzzles, like the what do you call it? Challenges.
Yeah.
I did the sandbag with every character. The adventure mode, the classic mode. I got, I think, every trophy, even though it took me years. So yeah.
Well, and great. Now that you've brought it up, that came out the week after Halo.
I was actually going to say I remember that being at the end of the year.
Basically 4 for 4 on Rockstar weeks. No pun intended.
Good Lord. Yeah. I mean, if you just don't sleep, you could beat all those games in once a week, right?
Yeah, but that was at a time when I had the time, so I could beat all of them. But then I would just spend so much time like exploring every in and out of each one.
Yeah, the junior in high school. That's
and Nintendo's smart about it. Right before Thanksgiving, right before Black Friday, which wasn't the same back then, but existed. And either way, it was the time before the holidays when it's like, well, I want to get my kids something. They like video games. Oh, here's one with Mario and this Zelda guy. I'll get that for them.
Yep. Dave, there's a game you might have heard of in 2001.
Maybe. I think I know what you're going with.
It was called Final Fantasy X.
Maybe my favorite game of all time. Like, way up there.
Yeah, your love of it actually made me buy the re-release because I was like, I clearly need to try this again.
How'd you feel about it?
I haven't played it yet, but I'm going... Like, I bought it. It's on the queue.
I think the combat holds up really well. It's probably one of the best iterations of turn-based combat, and of course, Final Fantasy has strayed from that for better and worse. But at the time, when I played through the remastered version, I was like, "Oh, I really like this."
I don't know why we can't do another, and maybe truly the audience wouldn't like it. Maybe it's too late, but to do a really solid turn-based game again, I don't know why we can't do that anymore.
It's part of the reason I love Persona so much.
Well, that's a great point.
Yep, exactly.
Do you think Persona would sell more copies if they made it like an active system? I don't think so.
I don't think so at all. The enjoyment of it comes from finding the elements, finding the weaknesses, finding the strengths, matching your Persona to that, which is exactly what Final Fantasy X did so well with the party swapping. Yep. It's my favorite part of that.
And it's why I like Cold Steel. And that whole series, the Trail series in general, is also pretty turn-based. It's tactical, too. It's got a map and positioning, but at the end of the day, it's about rapid-fire turns, being able to manipulate the turn order with certain mechanics. That's the stuff I like. And it's not for everybody, and that's fine. I mean, some people think that Persona 5 is just kind of because turn-based. But as long as it's fast-paced turn-based, I have a hard time seeing how you can have qualms with it.
I don't even have a problem with slower based turn based in the sense of I can plan out my moves. I love the idea of not being at a disadvantage, maybe because I don't remember a combo as quickly as other people. Like that stuff bothers me when it's like, oh, I hit square square triangle instead of square square X, and so I died. Like that stuff bothers the hell out of me.
Or it feels bad when you're like trying to fumble through a menu and looking for like a specific spell or something, and the enemies are still attacking you while it's happening. You're like,
Well, what's wrong with like strategy? Like, and you can argue that you can have an action game with strategy, and I get that, but like, I've been playing a lot of XCOM this like last few weeks. It's turn based too, and it's really nice to. My brain is being tested, and not just my fingers and like reaction time. I had enough of that with Sekiro. I don't need that in every game.
Exactly.
So Final Fantasy X, the voice acting overall really does hold up. I know there's some memeable stuff. I get that.
Yeah.
It was the first one, and it's still good.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, when you think about it, this is 2001, and the entire thing is voice acted. Yeah. Amazing.
It was really, one of the first, especially on this scale.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, other games kind of had quips and like little like, oh, here's some voices for this cutscene and that's it. But I mean, I remember watching the cutscenes in this game on PlayStation 2 thinking like, holy shit, this is movie quality. This is amazing how good these graphics are for PlayStation 2. And now, of course, you play the remastered version on PS4. It's like, oh my God, it holds up really well, even though it's just cleaned up for HD, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Japan just did a poll in February of their favorite Final Fantasies of all time. 1 through 30, so it's including all like the spin-offs like Mobius and Type 0 and Crystal Chronicles. 10's number 1 of all time in Japan. 10's number 1. 10, 7, 6, 9, 14 is their
I'm
top
surprised
5.
It's more than 7.
I was a little bit too. I would not have guessed that first.
10, 7, 9?
10, 7, 6, 9.
Hell yeah. That's a perfect, except for 10. That's
and
too high.
14's fifth, which I think is great. But again, a lot of people who have enjoyed, if you don't like MMOs, you're not going to like 14. But people who have gotten into it like 14's story, its graphics, its music.
Where was 15? Like bottom of the
10th.
List. Hey, that's I
5,
liked
8,
15.
4, 11, 15 is the rest of the top 10.
Where's the love for Final Fantasy Classic, the first one? I love that game.
It's not
the bottom
anywhere near the top. 24th.
Well, so Dave, we have a game that really encapsulates you.
What, we're done with Final Fantasy X already?
What? We have like 50 games to talk about. What else do you want us to say, Dave? You want to break down the
Final Fantasy X show because it's the best freaking game?
I'll tell you what. We've done like 6 episodes on Persona 5, and we probably have more coming.
Might have another one coming soon.
Once I play 10, we can have a 10 episode.
All right, there we go.
Because I actually think talking about some of the themes and the examination of religion and things like that, things that I didn't really pick up on that much the first time I played it, I think that would be interesting to talk about.
Do it.
The game that encapsulates you, Final Fantasy X. Then we have a game that encapsulates me, Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yep.
Holy shit. Everything about this game is me. Solid Snake. It's just like another story in this saga. Like, I love it. The bait and switch. I was a fan. I know everybody hated it. I thought it was freaking cool. I thought it was gutsy as hell. But like the cool gutsy, not like Death Stranding gutsy.
And it holds up fine now. Like, people were upset at the time because of expectations, but now you look back on it and you're like, no, that's fine.
That's fine. The gameplay still holds up really well too. They do a lot of things to change up the pace. The bosses are great. And there's some weird territory he covers with memes and the way that the government controls society and decides like what's popular. And it was really strange back then. And I've read so many articles about how prescient actually this game was with everything that we're facing now.
Almost picked out of the future, and the themes are dropped back into 2001.
Yeah, like the like almost collective subconscious and all this. A group thought and what do you call it when there's so much information on the internet that you actually can't find anything valuable or correct anymore?
Information overload.
Yeah, like that was all in this game. And you're like, why? Plus, that is my favorite thing when the AI that is talking to you, but you don't know it's AI yet, it starts to go crazy. So they start telling you really weird things. Like the Colonel talking about getting abducted in the middle of the night, which I reference all the time. So I love this game. And even today, like Metal Gear Solid 5 was really, really good. I think 2 still might be my favorite because of all the risks it took and how much it nailed them.
which is funny because if you told somebody that at the time, they would be like, no.
At the time, it was maybe the most unpopular Metal Gear game in a not that long.
Yeah,
it was the second one.
At the very least, extremely polarizing.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was this the game where there was like some hack on the memory card or something like that?
That was one.
That was one. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't remember which one it was.
Psycho Mantis is a mind reader of sorts.
Yeah, in this game, you fight a vampire.
Oh, well then. What?
Yeah.
And think how, I mean, that sounds a little silly, but then think about how far that series has gone since then.
Yeah.
That sounds pedestrian now. A vampire, well, that's nothing compared to whatever the hell Death Stranding did.
Yeah, well, yeah. That would be like something you learn in the first 2 minutes of Death Stranding.
It's the opening cutscene.
And then they would like not mention it again. And you're like, what the fuck is happening?
So I was looking on the list and I'm like, so Dave has a game and Shaun has a game. Where's my game? And I was like, well, maybe Melee, but it's still not my favorite, even though I liked it quite a bit. And then I was looking and I was like, oh, I can cheat. And my game from 2001 is Final Fantasy Chronicles.
I was going to bring that up because it's not cheating. I think that's a great selection.
I don't think you give it the year full credit for this. For those who don't know, it's the compilation that had both Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 4 on it.
And
for PlayStation.
6.
No.
6 was a different one. There was Chronicles and
God,
not anthologies.
No, I think it was.
Anthology, maybe, singular?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 different ones. So this is 4 and Chrono Trigger. Let me see.
Anthology had 5 on it, it looks like.
5 and 6?
Yes, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know when that came out. 1999.
Was...
It came out before the Chrono Trigger one.
Regardless, still a good selection.
Yeah, 4, good. Not one I ever...
Chrono Trigger's on it, you're happy.
Yeah, it's my number 1 game of all time, so that's why that's the one for me for this year. And I'll give 2001 a little bit of props for it, but let's be honest, that's not when Chrono Trigger came out. So it counts, but I'm not going to be like, oh, 2001's the best ever, because Chrono Trigger, because I already played it by that point. It was just cool to have it on PlayStation with the added cutscenes and the demerit of it having a massive amount of load times that really dragged it down.
Well, but for a lot of people, I'm imagining that was their first exposure to both of those games.
Yep.
So that's still huge.
Yep.
Well, especially 4 with the wonky releases in America of the Final Fantasy series. I mean, it went, basically it was called Final Fantasy 3, but it was really 6. So we're like 4 and 5 don't even exist to America until this came out, really.
Well, 4 did because it was 2.
This was 2. This was out on Super Nintendo.
But like you said, it's confusing.
But I had never played it on Super
neither.
Nintendo. So, this is still huge for me.
And similarly, just to touch on it really quickly, Tony Hawk 2 came out in 2001 on the Game Boy Advance. And I actually played that a decent amount too because it made for a fun portable game.
So I remember you on the bus playing that.
Yeah, so like getting the chance to experience some things on different formats, especially because exclusivity was so much bigger back then, does deserve some credit. So yeah, for some people that was their first experience with what might be the best RPG of all time. So it deserves a mention.
Yep.
Now, the first console that I ever bought, well, I won't get in it. I think I paid like for half of it. Was the GameCube.
Same.
And you had a pretty stellar lineup. Luigi's Mansion was solid to good. Pikmin was excellent. The reason I love Pikmin is the reason I love XCOM now. Is like it's super stressful. You're trying to time manage what you're gonna do, and you have a limited amount of resources that keep getting eaten. So that was great. Rogue Squadron 2, best Star Wars game ever made, even now. So, I mean, the game, and then the GameCube itself. Like, the GameCube came out that year. I love the GameCube.
And the Xbox and the GBA. Now, I don't think we're going to count consoles for these for the purpose of it's just too hard to plan on when they came out. But the fact remains that a lot of these games that we've talked about came out when they did because of these system launches. So even by that proxy, we're still going to get some connection to it. And that's fine because all those do matter. Those are 3 systems that people liked quite a bit. They had their flaws, all 3 of them. But man, I got a Game Boy Advance and I was like, look at this. I had a Game Boy, a regular Game Boy for years. I had a Game Boy Color. And then you go to this where I can basically play Super Nintendo and this little handheld. And I was like, my God.
I think there needs to be a little bit of talk. I know you guys probably didn't play it much to some sports games. For me, like Madden 2002 and NCAA Football 2002, I think were fantastic that year because like they were really starting to get in their own on the PlayStation 2 and the new generation of systems. So I remember playing those a lot when I was a kid and loving it in the sense of we didn't have to worry about the crap that was out there on the original PlayStation with the polygon type of thing, or the Super Nintendo where you couldn't even tell what was going on in sports games. So this was a really move forward in this type of thing for us.
I mean, NBA Street, that was the game I played. That's a sports game, kind of,
Yep.
and it was excellent.
Yeah.
And this is actually the age where I think sports games had a bit of a renaissance, especially between like 2001 and 2005 or 6, before the NFL got the exclusivity rights with EA, so that the 2K football franchise disappeared. And, I think there was a lot of strong entries in there because the very first 3D sports games were real rough.
Yeah. I think it's just NCAA football was the first one to release for PlayStation 2. So this one actually was a little bit rough. I was thinking of the next year. I think the next couple of years, which ones were really good. But still, I mean, it was just seeing the change at that time was worth it, I think, from moving from the PlayStation 1 graphics to PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about 2001. You have, if you're going to make a sports analogy here, the starters, 98 had some heavy hitters. They're like the LeBron, Anthony Davis, right? 2001 had a solid starting five if you're going to do the Final Fantasy X, Grand Theft Auto 3, Halo. Like, that's all really good. But the bench is phenomenal, too. Devil May Cry, Gran Turismo, Paper Mario,
Golden Sun.
Golden Sun, absolutely. So, like, the way that it rounds out
Zelda Oracle
is excellent. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Some people, it's still their favorite, like, Nintendo platform game.
I never played Twisted Metal, but I know some people love Black.
Yeah.
I played a little bit of it. Man, Paper Mario is one of my favorites of all time. I absolutely loved Paper Mario.
Yeah.
Playing through the first time. Just the change of Mario, like, wait a minute, Mario in turn-based? What the hell? This is great.
It was cutesy, and it was kind of funny. I don't think they went really hard on the humor yet by that point, but it was still good. It was a good follow-up to Mario RPG.
Yeah. And I like Mario RPG more than Paper Mario, but I did like Paper Mario, and in some ways it was a nice step forward. Nothing against the kind of like claymation style isometric, like 2.5D, but I thought Paper Mario looked clean as hell. And it's another one of those games that was on the GameCube that holds up really well even today.
Max Payne, it was okay, but it got 2 sequels, and it was pretty well regarded. Sonic Adventure 2.
NBA Street.
Yeah,
let me just say again, Golden Sun. Like, talk about a throwback game that I wish they would bring back. Like, man, I love that game.
Yeah.
Castlevania, Circle of the Moon. Like, there's just so much good stuff. We could talk about 2001 for like hours.
I enjoyed SSX Tricky.
Yeah, absolutely.
By EA Big. If you remember the commercials. So that was I wasn't really super into the extreme stuff. Again, I played Tony Hawk, but the snowboarding game seemed fine, seemed good.
Even the stuff that I didn't play, Half-Life came out it had come out already on PC, but it came out on consoles.
There's this weird game that you guys might have heard of called Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney that came out originally on the Game Boy Advance
in 2001. Oh no,
Oh, you yelled at Dave so much
response.
that he faded out again. Hold on, he'll come back. Give him time. He's catching up.
He's talking.
His internet hamsters are pretty lousy, but we'll give him time to reset. Sometimes he just dies, and I switch over, and he comes back. He's nodding. I see him.
Yeah, I'm here.
There he is.
So, one more time, Phyllis.
Yeah.
Phoenix Wright. Did it come out in 2001?
It says that it came out for the Game Boy Advance in 2001.
Damn. I can't believe I missed that one.
Mm-hmm.
I am obsessed with that. Maisie, I was playing through it now, and she's like, I love it. I love, like, it's because it's so unique, and you have to, like, think, and I'm like, yeah, that's why I love it, and the music's great, too.
Also coming out that year,
I'm
watching Dave.
Until, 10 later?
I hate this so much.
I know. It's phenomenal. You can see how sad Dave is about it.
What I like most about Phoenix Wright is how it really emulates Law and Order in the United States.
100%. Very much an accurate representation of the justice system. There is one other one I think has to be pointed out, even though I didn't love this game, which is Pokemon Crystal.
Oh, yeah.
Came out in 2001 in like June, and I liked Gold just fine. I don't think Crystal added a ton, but it does still count towards the year's summation as a whole.
Well, let me compare. Like in 2020 so far, I think it's gonna be a good year in gaming. But I've spent the last couple months, 2 to 3 months, like catching up through my backlog. Looking back on freaking 2001, there was no time for backlog.
Yeah.
Every month, it seems like something huge is coming out, and if it wasn't, it's because the next month was gonna double up on stuff.
It's true. You back, Dave?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, he's the wrong size, but you know what, Internet people? I don't even care right now. If I fix it, he's just going to burst out of the frame later when his frame rate catches
He's
up.
tiny.
Pokemon Stadium 2 came out in 2001.
That was when you could steal other people's Pokemons, yeah?
No, that's Coliseum.
Oh.
2 is just a sequel to the first Stadium where you could battle with your monsters in 3D, and it had slightly better graphics, and
okay.
It was fine.
Did you ever play Dragon Warrior 7?
7? No.
Well, that came out also in this year. And somebody loves Dragon Age games because, Dragon Warrior games because they keep coming out.
I don't know who, though.
Well, they turned into Dragon Quest, so...
Yeah.
People like Dragon Quest, especially Japan. It is also worth mentioning that Bejeweled came out this year. Now, I don't have a lot good to say about Bejeweled, but the fact remains it's a very catchy and oft-duplicated formula that was influential in its own right, and just because I didn't enjoy idly spending my time with it doesn't mean that a whole lot of people didn't on their own.
I spent some time with Bejeweled.
It's fine. Nothing wrong with it.
The predecessor to Candy Crush. It's basically the same thing.
I got my Xbox, and I didn't have a lot to play on it, so I played Bejeweled.
One thing that seems crazy in 2001 that seemed to take over was The Sims for personal computers. Did you guys ever get into The Sims?
I did not.
Sorry.
I was say I've kind of always wanted to, but never really have. And at this stage of my life, I can't ever see myself having the time now.
No, and I never really got into it either because I loved SimCity. I loved that game so much when I was a kid. And then getting into The Sims, I tried playing it a couple times. It's like, this is too insular, too close for me. I like the city building, not controlling a person and who he dates or whatever. But looking at this list, The Sims came out in 2001, and then 3 expansion packs came out. And there was 4 of the top 10 grossing games on PC that year were The Sims related.
Yeah, The Sims is what makes me realize there's going to be a part of me that's just I don't relate. This is why people use data to make decisions, not anecdotal evidence. Because if I was in the boardroom, I'd be like, no, we're canning The Sims. No one's gonna buy that shit.
And then you'd get fired.
I would have been horribly wrong.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see all these different expansions come out and it really led to this kind of subculture of people who have this second life. And there was even a game called Second Life that was an MMO essentially. But this idea of I'm going to kind of live vicariously through a computer simulation.
I don't have any proof of this, but I would guess that I have Sims to thank for a lot of my favorite features in a lot of other games that I play.
I would, yeah.
Because I think they've adapted. If I'm playing an RPG where I'm going to save the world and there's a dating aspect as part of that, I'm all for it. I need that plot, but it doesn't mean that there weren't elements that The Sims kind of pioneered that other games borrowed that I still really appreciate.
Yeah, it was, it was funny just hearing about people, how they could, almost troll their sim in a way, and some of the weird things people do to it. It kind of almost exposed a small piece of humanity to a lot of different people who never really realized how people would have kind of these sometimes weird thoughts to do to a video game character like that.
Well, there's the infamous swimming pool thing where it's yeah, come on, everybody, let's have a pool party. And then you take the ladder out of the pool and everybody drowns. And it's did you just murder all your people? Because I think you just murdered all your people. And
or seeing how close you can get your sim to committing suicide without letting him, taking out the toilet in the house so he has to shit in the corner for a while and then cleaning it up as soon as he's on the cusp of suicide. It's damn, this is really deep right now.
Yeah, it's some horror movie Saw type shit right there.
Exactly.
So the last one I want to mention, at least that I saw on the list, is the first Burnout came out in 2001. And while I don't think the first game was all that good, it is a franchise that I ended up enjoying, especially 3. And Paradise was pretty good. 2's okay, but 3 especially. I played a ton of Burnout 3. I love that game.
So someone's listening to this podcast. Well, Dave, did you ever play Burnout? I never did, but I've heard really good things.
So I can't remember playing it.
It was less sim-like than like Gran Turismo, right? Like it was a little more arcadey and fun.
Oh yeah,
that appeals to me.
And the further off the rails it went, the more they emphasized like the crashes, and you could actually make like, like Saints Row had that life insurance game where it was like throw yourself into traffic.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
This was sort of like the car version of that, where the goal eventually in the series became to make the biggest, most spectacular crashes possible, and there were still racing components to it. But yeah, very much embraced the more arcadey style of like a Gran Turismo or a Forza.
Was that the best part of Saints Row?
Yeah,
I think it was.
Yep.
Just hearing the bones crack of your person as you like exploded them into the sky.
And like a lot of things, 4 took it a little bit too far, but it's still one of my favorite minigames in 4 because with super powers and flight and whatnot, you can sometimes get hit by a car and get knocked across a fucking island. You're like, yep, that's going to cost you $50,000 in insurance claims. Thanks a lot, sir.
Yep. Someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, they're not going to mention Shenmue 2, are they?
No.
I am now. I just want to, I never played it. It got this cult following. They finally got Shenmue 3. I heard it wasn't that great, but yeah, it was a big release. A lot of people cared about Shenmue 2.
Let's see. I have a couple on here that I think about. Age of Empires 2, expansion of a great, tactical game. I loved Age of Empires. Age of Empires 2 made it even better, I think. I don't know if you guys played this at all.
You should play XCOM, Dave.
I probably would like it.
Yeah,
I like those kind of strategy type games. But Age of Empires, for me, the original Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2, like those two together were so good in so many ways. I'd never played a game like that before where I'm like, okay, I've got to gather these resources. And oh shit, people are attacking me, hurry, make new people attack. Like that type of thing. It was kind of such a good, calm. Oh God, go. Calm. Okay, everything's calm again. Everything's fine. Like that type of game. Like this is no tension to full tension to no tension again.
So it was like RTS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. I kind of want to find a way to play it now. I don't know how easy that would be.
It wouldn't be too difficult.
Probably like on a computer that I don't have, but
essentially exactly. That's why I didn't play it a ton at the time. I did play both AoE and AoE 2, but it was primarily at school.
Was it good?
That's where I played it too.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was where I first got I dipped my toes into strategy games as a whole. But as we kind of talked about before, they're not that different from turn-based games. Different, sure, but still the idea of like summarizing a situation and figuring out the best approach and that kind of stuff, it links them to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I had it in my 8th grade computer class. Basically, the only things we learned in that computer class was how to touch type, which was very useful, by the way.
Yeah.
I learned how to do that, and I can type really fast nowadays thanks to that. And then once we were done with practicing that, they basically like, all right, free time. And they had Age of Empires, the original one, on there with LAN capabilities. So everybody in our class just played group AoE games every time in computer lab. I'm like, yes, this is the best middle school class ever.
Because we had to take an early enough bus to get to school on time, because if it was late or it was missing or it broke down, you wanted to make sure you had at least one more after that to get to school there. So usually we were getting there, what, Dave, like 45 minutes to an hour before like school started most of the time if we took the bus?
We got 45 minutes because we got on the bus at 6:45. It stopped at 7:30, and then we had 8:15. School started. Yeah.
So typically I was hopping off the bus and I was going right to the computer lab for that span there for like 6 months to a year of just like, oh, cool, like a bunch of other friends that I know are all going to be in here, and we're going to see whoever, like the first 8 there get in this game, and we're going to play it. Let's do it.
I pathetically hung out at the girls' school hoping that I would actually make friends. I never did.
You missed out, or I missed out.
I did.
I don't know. I mean, neither of us has anything to show from it. So
I mean, at the time, it feels like you missed out, but I think in hindsight, I missed out.
Yeah, all right. Man. What time did you guys have to? Could you imagine getting up at 6 a.m. for life now?
Just think about. Hold on, there's more to this. Chris had to ride his bike to the bus stop, which was what, 2 miles?
Yeah. Something like that.
So how'd you do it? Like you put your bike on the rack or whatever?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The bike rack was full. I got to fuck off while the people got on the bus because they didn't need to wait for the next one. There's only 2 spots in the bike rack, so.
Although a momentous thing happened in 2001, I got my driver's license, so I started driving Chris to school.
And finally, my friendship with Dave paid off.
Yeah, exactly.
I say that 95% joking, but
and now you're wondering when it's going to pay off again.
I know. I'm waiting. There'll be dividends, I'm sure of it. He'll be a trust fund baby at some point.
Oh yeah, Dave! I can't wait to
trust fund baby now.
I can't wait to be part of your entourage.
The ship sailed. My kids could be trust fund babies theoretically, but I can't be.
Yeah, I think you'll make more money.
Oh.
You're already at whatever. I always forget how this goes. Basically, what I'm saying is, in no time, you're going to be a millionaire. And when that happens, I expect a payout.
I never will be.
You're my LeBron.
Yeah.
And I'm your shitty LeBron friend.
You're J.R. Smith.
Yes.
Oh no. Nobody wants to be J.R. Smith.
No, J.R. Smith doesn't want to be J.R. Smith. One other game I did want to mention that I didn't play this one as much as I did the version 2, but Red Faction. Red Faction 2, I played forever, but the first Red Faction came out this year. I thought it was kind of important as far as like this space age type of first-person shooter game. Red Faction 2's multiplayer mode was one of the best I've ever played, and I think that's maybe nostalgic of living in the dorms in college, but holy shit, it was so much fun.
That's what I'm saying, man. 2001, there's a lot of good stuff, but we gotta vote.
I'm going through the list right now just to refresh your memories about the biggest stuff I can find from 98. And if I miss something, I'm super sorry, but this was a super quick research. I'm almost done with it. I wasn't quite ready to segue. You've ruined me.
I'm sorry, but I do want to say 98, I remember thinking there's some real big heavy hitters. But Chris and I don't remember us having this length of discussion on the ancillary titles like we're doing here. Like we could keep going on 2001. Mm-hmm. We're kind of forced stopping right now because we got to end the show sometime. But I don't know. I'm leaning towards 2001, but I do want to hear this list.
So we just talked about all the ones from 2001. These are the ones I just picked out from 98. There are others, obviously, and we talked about more in that episode, so go check it out. But Mario Party, Rogue Squadron, Pokemon Yellow, Metal Gear Solid, Symphony of the Night, Castlevania, StarCraft, Tekken 3, 1080 Snowboarding, Xenogears, Resident Evil 2, Half-Life, Banjo-Kazooie, and Ocarina of Time.
I see, Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie.
Symphony of the Night is
those are
some people's picks for one of the best games ever made. I see it, even though I don't necessarily agree. I think it's really good. So, yeah, the time has come to decide. Does 1998 sit on the throne and continue to hold the mantle of the best year in gaming until otherwise appointed as some other show takes it on? Or are we going to have 2001 replace it and kick 1998 off into nothingness?
Well, I know Dave's vote. There's not a lot of drama there.
You do?
I do. There's no way you're going to vote 1998 is a better year than the year your favorite game of all time came out.
Fair.
Well, that diffuses the tension right off the bat for him, at least.
Well, but I was going to say at the same time, that's not necessarily true, or we could just end the competition right now of every other year. So maybe it's not that simple, Dave, but that's a huge benefit for you.
So for me, it's a quality versus quantity argument, basically. I look at my two favorite games from 1998 and 2001. I love Ocarina of Time 98, but I enjoyed Final Fantasy X just that much more, I'd say. So that gives that the edge. But then I look at all the ancillary titles and the other things that came out. There's just more things in 2001 for me that's more of wow, I love that game, like Halo. Or, I had fun with that game, like Age of Empires. There's just more on that list in 2001 that I was just I like that one. I like that one. It just it eventually just kind of weighs down and beats 1998.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way of looking at it, because to me, I'm it is sort of like looking at a roster of sorts, whether it's a sports example or just anything where you can compare, apples to oranges. There is no A+ game for me in 2001. Not even the original Halo, which I think is a solid A. But the difference between 2001 and 1998 to me is there's a whole bunch of A- B+ type of games in 2001, and outside of the biggest stuff in 98, I feel like there's a pretty steep drop-off. Not that they're terrible, but there's a lot more C+, B- type games in 98. And if I want to be comfortable standing on it as the best game in the best year in the history of gaming, I don't think I want it to be a couple of real standouts and then a bunch of eh.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have to vote for 2001 over 1998.
The issue I have, and what's going to hurt, is Ocarina of Time is my number one. And that was 98, obviously, but it's for the same reason. And even if I look at like Metal Gear Solid, huge game for 98, influential, but I like 2 more. And I'm one of those people where I'm not like Legend of Zelda, Mario, the original Mario, most influential game ever. But it's not my number 1 game because I don't just measure things on how influential they were. I measure just pure quality and how much I enjoy them now. And so for a mix of all of that, plus what you guys have said, I kind of give it to 2001 as well.
Yeah, I think for me too, there's a little bit of personal aspect of this. Is I started playing a lot more video games in 2001 than I did in 1998 because I had a job and so I had money that I could start buying, some of these games and stuff like that. I turned 16 in 2001, so I got a job. I had some money. I could buy my own games nowadays instead of having to rely on allowance or birthdays and stuff like that. Yeah. So kind of helped the situation.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Like a lot of games earlier on, I played later. So I can give credit to the year they came out, of course, but there's something about playing a game when it came out, where you were in your life, what it meant to you back then. And 2001, that was like the peak of game, right around my peak of gaming because I was able to start doing it on my own, staying up late after my parents went to bed to play Halo. Like, I'm never going to forget that.
Yeah, the tricky thing to me is I don't know if we're going to ever go back too much further than 98 because... Like, say we picked, 1994, just to pick a year. Well, let's see. How old was Shaun in 1994? 7. Yeah. How old was I in 1994? 9. And I was gaming. Just, I probably gamed a lot more than Dave did because even though my family really didn't have any money, I was fortunate enough that I had an NES. At least my grandparents did, so I got to play it when I was over there. And then I had an SNES at my dad's house, so over the weekend I got to play that. So I was actually gaming a pretty solid amount for what wasn't super widespread at the time. It was obviously growing once the NES came out, but it wasn't like it is today where you can find a video game system in damn near every house. But even then, I was 9 at the time. So like Shaun mentioned, there's not the same connection to some games. I had a few back then, but it really started taking off when I became a teenager and beyond that. So we might eventually examine those years, but if anything, they're probably going to hover around this range and after just because we're going to have both the connections to it and the ability to look back on it and see if they hold up.
Yeah, the 1996 is when Mario 64 came out. I don't see us going earlier than that. And I don't even know if 96 is necessarily going to be worth it because Mario 64 is really great. What are some of the other big hitters?
Mario RPG.
Yeah, there's going to be some in there, especially from the tail end of the SNES if we went back and looked at it. But will it have enough clout to tackle a year like we just did? I don't know. And eventually that might be the mantle we take up and say, all right, well, let's take a look and see, just to give it a fair shake. But we'll see. It's going to be tough. We haven't really gone through all of that. There's a lot of years to go through, so we're not exactly like scraping the bottom of the barrel here. But just to give you some of the thought process. And people that were gaming on an Atari back in the day who are going to have connections to Burger Time and Asteroid and all sorts of other stuff, that's awesome for you. It doesn't really match the experience of the people on this particular show, though, so you may find our panel wanting. But I don't think so. I think we'll speak for pretty much everybody.
Yeah. So far, 2001, number 1. 1998, number 2.
Yep. I mean, if some of the things we were looking at, just to kind of shore this in even more, was the amount of the list we're looking at has games that were rated above 88 on Metacritic, and 98 has, I think, 15 games on it, 20 games on it. 2001's list is like 30 games long that were over 88. It's probably like so 40. Many games.
Yeah.
40? Yeah.
And then we're still going back through the entire year's releases and making sure we didn't miss anything, because, again, something may have become better over time or was overlooked or had some kind of thing that had a hitch in the beginning, but even so, to me, I feel pretty comfortable having 2001 replace 98. And there's nothing against 98, and Ocarina of Time is phenomenal, but to me, I'm like, yeah, I won't lose any sleep over that.
Yeah, exactly.
But we would love to hear from you, either in the comments on this video, which I'm always reading and approving and responding to, or through the usual channel, objectionnetwork@gmail.com. You can send stuff there, too. We'll read it on the show, and you can voice your pleasure/displeasure with the choices that we've made. But that's for another time. Any sign-offs before we head out here for the day?
No, I'm excited to do. I'm going to be really interested in what happens when we start tackling like more recent years, because comparing the recency bias to nostalgia, I think is going to be a really interesting examination.
Yep. In the spirit of how I've been this entire episode, I just want to say it right.
Oh no, Dave's cutting out again. Oh no.
That's perfect.
And I will say there'll probably be like a 3-year moratorium. Like we're not going to do is 2019 the best year of video gaming ever. Until maybe at least next year at the bare minimum, because it needs some time to breathe.
But I could see us doing 2017 pretty soon.
I think that's why I think 3 years is about the right cutoff. It's been enough time.
Yeah.
2017 has some games that you and I both really, really enjoyed.
Dude, it's gonna be crazy.
I don't know if it has the depth, but it'll come up eventually, and that's going to be the enduring legacy of this segment.
We should do that one next. I think that we've done pretty old so far. Let's do a new one.
Well, and I would say, Dave hasn't played some of the biggest release from it, but he has now.
Yeah.
Look at me.
So we've actually got him on the level. You can talk about them intelligibly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at objectionnetwork.com, on social media at Team Objection, if you want. It's youtube.com/Objection Network for more video game stuff, pretty much 7 days a week. And I gave you the email address earlier, so I'm not going to say it again. Goodbye.